Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for Ask the Expert. I'm Catherine, and I'm the virtual program coordinator for the National Aphasia Association. The National Aphasia Association is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote public awareness and understanding of aphasia, to promote research that aims to improve the lives of people with aphasia, and to provide support to all persons with aphasia and their care partners. This month's topic is very timely and important. Tonight we're going to be talking all about voting with our panel of experts, Sara, Troy, and Marion, who I'll be introducing in just a moment. Please write your questions about tonight's topic. So anything related to voting and aphasia and disabilities in the Q&A box. And then you can use the chat for saying hello, adding a comment. We are going to get to as many of your questions as we can tonight. If we don't get to your question, or if you have another question about voting or aphasia, please email the National Aphasia Association at answers@aphasia.org. And now I'm excited to introduce our panelists. So our first expert tonight is Sara Kempner. Sara Kempner is the Director of Creative Campaigns and Strategic Collaborations with the U.S. Vote Foundation. Her career mission is to uplift and empower individuals through access to education and voting. She has received national recognition for her voter outreach, organizing, and civic education expertise, including the prestigious Sallie Mae First Class Teacher Award, sponsored by the American Association of School Administrators. Sara Kempner's current focus is on narrowing the voting turnout gap experienced by underrepresented citizens through the U.S. Vote Foundation. Most recently, Sara Kempner is a co-creator of the state-by-state resource for voters with disabilities and the Your Eligible Situations Yes campaign, which she featured on NPR in September. Our next expert is Troy Van Horn. Troy Van Horn is a videographer, writer, guitarist, and artist. He teamed up with Marion and Sara in 2022 to write a blog about voting for people with aphasia for Vote America Foundation. He has had aphasia for 5 years. And our third expert is Marion Leaman. Marion Leaman is an aphasia researcher at the University of Kansas Medical Center, where she directs the ALL-CAN-Converse Aphasia Lab. She worked as a speech-language pathologist specializing in aphasia for over 25 years before completing her PhD in 2020. Her research focuses on a therapy called ecologic treatment that she developed to help people with aphasia improve their everyday conversational skills. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sara, who's going to be kicking us off and sharing a great set of slides, which the NAA will make available to you all when we post the video on YouTube. And we will also share a copy of the slides in the next newsletter. So make sure you're subscribed to the NAA newsletter. The slides will have the links to all the great information that is being shared tonight. Sara?
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much for having us. And before we start tonight, I also want to encourage anyone listening to turn on their captions if they'd like, because we will be showing some video excerpts and you might want to be able to access those captions as we proceed. Tonight, we're going to be talking to you about your voting rights, what they are, what the best strategies are, and some pro tips to make sure that you cast your ballot comfortably. And we decided before we really introduced this entire topic to show you this election protection hotline, because if there's just one thing that you're going to take away from tonight, or one thing you might need to access if you do encounter problems voting associated with your disability on election day, is this election protection hotline. So we'll make this available on the slide. It's right at the start so that it'll be a go-to resource for you in the unlikely event that you need it. But it's a great hotline with lawyers standing by to help you if there's a problem. So we're going to be breaking up our presentation on voting in 3 segments. I'm Sara Kempner, and I'm going to start by letting you know a few of your rights that are going to be really critical to making sure that you can self-advocate when you're at the polls, and just to feel prepared before you get there. Troy Van Horn is going to follow me, and he has interviewed people with aphasia to find out best practices and top strategies for voting in a really compelling vignette of interviews. I really like to take this moment also to thank Melanie Samaji for giving access to Troy so that he could interview the participants in his segment of tonight's presentation. So thank you, Melanie, very much. And lastly, we will have our expert going over resources and pro tips that will really assist you in voting in case you need extra resources beyond our presentation. So before we get started into the tips, I just want to point out to you that more and more people with disabilities are voting. So you can see this big increase from 2016 to 2020. And part of that is because there was more access to mail-in balloting during the COVID pandemic. But it's also because we've seen further implementation of accessibility at polling locations. So more and more places are making physical ramps and communication ramps to make the vote accessible. And our goal tonight is to keep building on this trend and make sure that you are a voter. So we are going to go through your rights. We have 6 main rights to point out to you, and there are many more. You can always go on US Vote Foundation to look up your state's rights if you want to see each one of them spelled out for you. So the first one is just making sure that you know that you have the right to vote. If you meet your state's requirements for age and citizenship, residency, you have the right to vote. The only person who can take away your voting rights is a judge, right? So make sure that you are aware that, yes, you have those rights. So you can click on the slide when you access this to see what your state's requirements are. But know that, yes, likely you are a voter. I think it's also important to know, as I mentioned, that knowing that only a court can take away those rights, that sometimes people may not realize they have the right to vote. They themselves may not realize that. Your family members, people at the polls, or healthcare professionals might question that. So just make sure you are secure in the knowledge about this cherished right. And you also, based on the Voting Rights Act of 1965, your right cannot be taken away even if reading and writing are hard for you. That is not something that would disqualify you from voting. The second right that is really important as the Help America Vote Act right is being implemented, if you don't feel like it's set up so that you can vote privately and independently, you can have someone to help you. You're entitled to the assistant of your choice if you are voting with a disability. And this can be a family member of yours, it can be a friend, it could be a poll worker, just somebody that you trust. There are a few exclusions to this, such as a person's boss or their union leader. In some states, this will also include a candidate on the ballot unless that candidate is an immediate family member. But you can also go to US Vote Foundation or click on this link to see what your state's specific rules are about the assistant that you can have. And this assistant can help you read the ballot, can help you advocate for an accessible ballot marking device. The person would not be expected to influence your vote, just to help facilitate your vote. Equally important, you have the right to refuse assistance. Sometimes when people see a person with a disability, their instinct is to kick in to try to help out. But not everybody wants that kind of assistance. So although the offer for assistance would likely come from a good place, it's completely understandable if you want to refuse that help. So that is also your right. You have the right to vote independently and privately. So independently meaning on your own, right? And privately meaning that no one can see for whom you voted. Next up, your fourth out of the 6 rights that we are going to share with you today is that you have the right to accommodations. You can ask for reasonable modifications at your polling center. And we're going to share with you a few tools and procedures that you might want to ask for that would be considered a reasonable modification. So the first one is you have the right to ask for a plain language ballot if it's available in your state. Right now, we have 21 states that offer ballot measures. So, if there's a ballot question, for example, like a referendum or an initiative, if you have a ballot question, it's in 21 states, it's guaranteed that this will be written out in plain language. Some of the accessible marking devices, depending on the state you're in, will have a feature that can help with the language that is used on the ballots too, and it can and also access to other languages sometimes too. So you can ask for a plain language ballot in some states. Secondly, you can ask to use the accessible ballot marking device, which will have a screen reader for you. So if it's difficult to read the language, you can plug in even and have it read with earphones on. Many states that provide absentee ballots for people with disabilities have it set up so that you can also use a screen reader at home. So if you have your own device that you're using at home that reads the content online to you, you can use that for voting as well. It's a great asset. And you also, by the way, if you have stuff on your phone that helps you, like your own tools, bring that in too. The third tool that could be available to you in an accessible ballot marking device is a computer touchscreen. So instead of going in and filling out a paper ballot, like bubbling who you want to vote for and feeding into the machine, the accessible ballot marking devices often are touch screens, and it goes back and checks and verifies before you submit what you want to vote. And then usually it prints out your ballot so that you have it in your hands to be able to feed it into the ballot machine. It's very helpful. And just to be clear that from the Help America Vote Act, again, every polling location is supposed to have one of these machines in a federal election.
Do you want to mention anything more about the marking device, Sarah?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were going to the next one.
Okay,
yes.
don't go with anything
So
more
you
on that
also
one. I'm controlling
Sorry
the
about that.
slides and Sarah is controlling the talking. So we got a little joint effort here.
Sorry about that. Yes, you also can use a special digital pen. And I just want to be clear, tonight we're really focusing on aphasia, but sometimes people can have other issues with motor skills or mobility. And that's why I think it's important to know about each one of these. So if there's a problem with dexterity, and even, sometimes a touch screen is hard, right? If you can't extend your arm all the way, but that's why you have the right to ask for these reasonable modifications, depending on what your disability is. If there's a will, there's a way to vote, and the state needs to make that happen for you. Now over to procedures. One thing that I think is great for all voters is the chance to read your entire ballot at home before you vote. So you can go online to US Vote Foundation or to your state or local municipality. You can access the ballot. I think it's great to go also look, when you look it up, you can look by your specific voting precinct, because it may include local offices and county offices that you wouldn't see at the state level. And so you can see how it's set up. The ballots they're different in every state, and they're so wordy, right? They can be set up in a way that's confusing to anybody, and the different arrows and the boxes. So it's a really great option to check out a sample ballot, get familiar with each of the different offices, take a moment to look up the different candidates. And we always hear about the big races, but there might be others that you haven't heard about. So you can look that up. And also that way you won't have any surprises if you find out there is a ballot question this year. So for instance, in Connecticut, where I am right now, we have a ballot question about getting no excuse absentee balloting in our state. Right now, we only have, we have to have a specific excuse. So I recently went online and just looked up the exact language of that so I could make sure I was comfortable with it beforehand. So looking up your sample ballot, really important and helpful. A second procedure that is really helpful is if you find out that the polling place that you're assigned to is not accessible to you for some reason. So it might be at a place you've been to before, and you just know that they're not going to have the accommodations that you specifically need. You can contact your local election office and ask them to reassign you to a different place where you feel comfortable that they will be able to provide you with the accommodations that you need. Marion, thank you for sharing this next slide with some of the links that you can look up to see each of the resources under those tools and procedures. So first, I want to point out the link to the accessible ballot marking device and the screen reader. It's really smart to look that up because different states and even different counties sometimes use different ballot marking devices. And this way you can know how to operate it beforehand. I also think this takes away a lot of anxiety, because when you hear the term accessible ballot marking device, it sounds a little bit intimidating, like it's going to be this big booth with levers and all kinds of things all over it. So once you see, it's probably going to look just like an iPad, with headphones. It'll probably like make you feel more confident if you check it out and you can practice it. You can even go into your local election office and ask them to practice with it if you feel nervous. You can watch online tutorials about how to use these devices, which are also very helpful. And I think really, of all the things on here, I would say if you were just going to do one of these three things, I would contact your local election official. We contact them all the time through US Vote Foundation. We have a great relationship. We actually have a directory of every single election official in the country, and we're constantly checking in with them to make sure all of our information is up to date. And they are so committed to making sure that your voting process goes smoothly, and they'll know all the ins and outs. So if you give them a call, if you can say like, hey, can you make sure that you have this set up, or that all your poll workers have been trained about how to communicate with somebody with aphasia. Just giving them a heads up, they're going to want to help you, right? And they can personalize it. So local is your answer, and you always want to trust your state or government sources on voting. So you're going right to the source. They're great for asking for about those accommodations, changing your polling place, and just practicing.
Sarah, that last link there will take people to that long list of all the different election officials in the country. That link that says local
That's
election.
right, Marion.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
So when they click on
I
that,
love
that
that
will bring them.
resource.
Yeah, actually, you know what? It's actually, so at US Vote Foundation, two of our most popular resources are election dates and deadlines, like finding out like, oh no, am I too late to register or to request my ballot? Or just wanting to get in touch with your voting officials. So when you click on that link, you'll go over to US Vote Foundation, you enter in your state, and your, where, you know, the part of the state you live in, and it will give you their contact. Okay, second to last, before we come over to Troy, my favorite part of the presentation, you might be able to vote by absentee ballot. Most states will, a lot of states just offer absentee voting for people who ask for it, but there are still many who, or many that require an excuse. And a disability can be a qualified excuse. So you can check out what the requirements are in your state. So we've got one link there that gives you an option to apply for an absentee ballot if you need to make that. You can also and go on a list in many states. So many states will even have permanent absentee balloting, where once you get on that list, they'll automatically send you your ballot. You know, they might check in with you to make sure your residency has remained the same, but that's also a really handy resource. One thing you might want to check out is that some states in recent years have made new laws about ballot return measures. So if you're not returning the ballot yourself, if you're going to try to have someone else help you with that, whether it's from your own private residence or if you live in a congregate setting, some states now have new rules for that you might need one or two witnesses. In some cases, you even have to get it notarized if you're not returning it yourself. And they'll want to see if your signature matches what you put on file for your registration. That's another case where I would say contact your local election official if you're nervous about the signature requirement. I don't know about you, but I have no idea how I signed my registration. I don't know what my signature looked like. And I know that as I'm getting older, my signature changes. It's been getting a little scraggly. So it might not look the same. So you can contact your local election office if you have any concerns about the signature requirement. So yeah, that's kind of a new thing. That link there is going to take you to US Vote Foundation, where we compiled a list of the states who have made these requirements. And in some states, just one last thing on that, this requirement doesn't always apply to people with disabilities. So sometimes they waive it for that. Last up, a residence, like some type of congregate setting, like a nursing home, a rehabilitation facility, assisted living, any type of state hospital or developmental center. So if you're in this type of group situation, you absolutely do not give up your right to vote. And you can go to the polls, you know, if it's difficult for you to get there, you can vote by absentee ballot. You can also even have your polling place arranged at the facility. You can contact that local election office and let them know that you want someone to come out to conduct it. And if you aren't feeling well on the day that they come, you can also reschedule, right? As long as you're doing it in advance and giving them enough notice before the election. So these are great options, whether you want to vote by mail or absentee ballot or have someone coming right there. But please remember that you do, like if we go back to number one, you should know you do have that cherished right to vote. So these are your 6 main rights. There are many more, as I mentioned, and every state has to follow the federal rights that we're talking about, but they also have state rights on top of that. And some states have lots more rights. So I do encourage you to check out the Guide for Voters with Disabilities so that you can see that complete list. And you can even print them out and take them with you if you're concerned. And now I really want to move from this more legal framework to something I think more relatable, which would be voters who have aphasia that are sharing their best strategies with you. Troy Van Horn is going to go through this with you, these incredible interviews that he conducted. Troy Van Horn is a true voting champion for US Vote Foundation, co-author of Aphasia and Voting, Accommodation Requires Communication Ramps, which is a widely accessed blog that he wrote with Marion a couple of years ago for US Vote Foundation. Troy?
Okay, hi, I'm Troy Van Horn. We all have the ability to vote, and everyone can help. So no matter where you're getting this from, remember, you have just support and those events around us. So we've got you some amazing people having to share insights. Okay, so first up, Holly. She's going to discuss the importance, the advocating, you know, for yourself. One thing, slow down.
I've been voting with aphasia for 20 years, and I've had to kind of change my game plan on voting, especially in the last few years. And the reason I've done that is, for one thing, when going to vote, because voting is so incredibly important for everyone to do. But with aphasia, it can be a little tricky, or a lot tricky. And one of the things that I still have a bit of a problem with is if the people who are explaining the electronic ballots, if they're talking too fast. So advocate for yourself and say, sorry, could you please slow down? I have aphasia. And so they'll slow down with their rate of speed.
Advocating. All right. Next, we had Anne and George, who can assist you at the voting booth.
I've had 3 strokes. I suffer from aphasia. My concern is, having voted in the past, I need my husband at times to help me in the voting process and perhaps the booth. I don't want to be constrained in that way.
I'm going to be relying on my wife to help me, and she's prepared to come to the voting booth area, the voting area, and helping me with it. So I don't have any apprehensions about it whatsoever, really.
Remember, this choice to ask for help, the absolutely yours. All right, now let's for Brad.
What's bad is people look at me and think, oh, he's fine, and then you tone it, you drill down a little, then you suddenly realize what is so unfine about him, and that's a really curious stuff to try to get through it. And supposedly I'll do good. We'll find out. So.
Okay, and Holly has another use for tip for us.
I write down, I bring in a list of who I'm going to vote for. Some people I'll remember, but I don't always remember. So in the last couple of years, I've started bringing in a list of exactly who I'm voting for, if there are any measures on the ballot, and I know how I'm going to vote on those. So that helps me. I'm not stressed. I go in, vote, and I'm done. So those are my recommendations, but get out and vote.
All right, we've had Ann and Brad and also Tina, who will talk about the importance of taking your time and read everything.
What we find is that sometimes the ballots have a lot of double negatives that are not making sense to me, and I'm slow at reading, and I need the time to make sure that I'm fully reading every ballot proposal and that my husband, if necessary, can help me. I don't want someone to tell me that that's cheating or that he can't be in the process with me, because that's something that I need and I feel a right as a citizen to enjoy.
But it's my first election going to be in it, and I'm going to go print out the sample ballot and get that app, and then I know exactly what's going to be on the ballot, and then I'll be a chance to little update that, and I think that'll be ahead, keep me ahead. Johnson County will print, so you can print out complete ballot that you're going to get in between, and that's going to help immensely.
I can read, but actually the words are confusing for everyone because they make it confusing, and I have to read beforehand, and then I can go vote.
All right, one point someone in this group was asked Holly about it was benefits of having an aphasia ID card.
Would it be helpful to hand your aphasia card with your ID or voter ID card when you walk in so that they just know?
Yes, I think that'd be very, very valuable. I really do. Because that explains on there what aphasia is, and I think that would further help the people who are explaining how to run the electronic system if you're doing that.
Finally, Don reminds us all to make our voices heard and get out the vote.
The thought that I'm trying to communicate to other people, it doesn't matter what, if you voted or not, to who or whatever, but you need to vote, period. Your voice counts. It doesn't matter if it's hurt or bad, or if you can't do what you want to do, if you pull the lever correctly or not. Just make sure do what you need to do to vote. That's the point of our country, is we were born for voting.
So what do you think? There's just one thing. Keep going.
Now it's my turn, and I'm suddenly realizing while watching those videos from the interviews that you did, Troy, I've watched them now a dozen times, and I'm suddenly realizing what a huge challenge I've set up for myself coming after Troy Van Horn and all of those amazing people sharing their experiences and their tips. So honestly, I'm not even going to try. to meet that challenge, because it's just not possible. Just wow. And thank you so much, NAA and Troy and Sara, for inviting us and working on this project together. I am just so filled with joy about all of it. So now I will not be meeting that challenge as I go through our last few slides and share some pro tips with you. And then we'll have a little time for questions from any of you. All right. I'm going to come down off my wave of joy for a moment and focus here. All right, so pro tips. This really draws together everything that Sara has said and everything that our ambassadors for voting have shared with us. You probably could get the sense as you were listening to people, have a plan to vote. This is really fundamental in terms of being able to get out there and cast your vote and doing it confidently and having the time to do it. The forethought ahead of time so that you know just what you might need or what you might want. And one of the points on this slide I think that is really important, and I had not really been aware of myself, is that laws change really often in terms of what's available, what's legal, what's not legal, different kinds of voter ID, and so on. So that's part of our planning process that all of us really need to be thinking about. I know I just got my 18-year-old son to request his absentee ballot from being a part of this presentation. I want to share, because I think we do have a minute. This is an amazing resource. So I'm going to click on it and walk everybody through it because it's worth clicking on again when you're home for everybody with or without aphasia. So I'm going to just share this. This is from US Vote Foundation. I do happen to know our dear friend, Sara Kempner, had her hands on this. I asked her the other day. So the voter journey map. So this is a little journey of about 5 minutes, and I'm going to fill in some answers so you can see how it works. I think it takes less than 5 minutes. So you're going to pick what kind of voter you are. Where do you vote? I vote in Kansas. And then you pick your county. Find the dates of the next election. And this is what's so great on this resource is you can customize it for information that you want. So I want the election dates on my map. I'm going to try to turn down the music. I don't know if I can do.
Marion, there's a button at the top. You can even turn the music off at the top if you want.
Oh, can I? I kind of like the music, but I'm competing with it. And I'm already competing with Troy and all those people. Okay, so let's just go through this. We know that eligibility varies. If you want your eligibility rules, say yes. I love the encouragement to keep going. It makes voting even more fun. I love this. This asks about, do you want to double check if your voter registration status is still up to date? So if you're not sure and you want them to check it for you, they will. So yes, I want my voter registration status sent to me on my map. Okay. Pretend I need to register to vote. It's going to tell me how to do that. Voter ID, Sara discussed this. I know my state options already. So for this one, I'm going to select no, I don't need it. I don't need assistance to obtain my voter ID. Yes, I want information about voting with a disability. This is, Sarah, this is about voting rights restoration is if somebody had been in prison. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So, let's say I was in prison. I wasn't, but let's say that I was, and I want that. I'm planning to vote in person at my polling place. Okay. Your polling places can change. So I want this map to tell me my current voting place for fall of 2024. I want to read my ballot ahead of time. So all I do is click yes here. It's going to send me my ballot. I want to know that election official because Sarah told me I need to contact them. And one of the things I learned recently is even if you're somebody without a disability, you can request in a lot of states some of those devices or accommodations, and then they will get the objects out of the box, the voting pen, different devices. And so then it's there for the person who needs it. Okay, we're almost done with this. I'm a star, they tell me. Okay, so then you can download your map and have it sent to your email. So I did that already, and I will show you what it looks like. I think I have to stop share and then reshare. This is what they sent me. Let me zoom in. And this took the few minutes that we just spent together looking at that, filling all of that out, and they sent it to my email in under 5 seconds. And this is what it looks like. All of the things that I selected, you could select one item, you could select all 15 or so of them. And then it gives you a live link right in your email for your state, exactly what you want. So this is just fabulous. And when Sarah shared it with me at first, I immediately knew this was something that I wanted to share with everybody. All right, let's get back to the slides. Oh,
And if for some reason you don't want to put your email in, if you clicked on download right now, it comes up on your screen as a PDF. So you don't even have to share your email. Sometimes people don't like to do that.
I didn't even realize
They don't
that.
collect anything anyway, so if you share.
All right, so let's go on to the next slide. I just have a few kind of summarizing tips here for you. So as you've all learned and heard about tonight, US Foundation has such amazing resources for voters with all kinds of disabilities. And so please go check this out. We've only shared with you a small portion of those and the ones that we felt most relevant for people who happen to have aphasia, but you may also have family members or friends with other kinds of disabilities where you can certainly find more information on that website. Here again is that election protection hotline. This is where we originally had it in today's talk, and we decided it had to go on slide 1. So you could find it quickly, but here it is again as a resource. And there's some really wonderful other websites that Sara has compiled for us. So Vote Riders can help you get your voter ID. Some states require voter ID, some states do not. So quick, easy to read graphic map showing you which states have voter ID requirements, which ones don't. And then if you're in a state where it's required, it will walk you through how to get that voter ID, which was fabulous. The US Vote Foundation has a help desk that can answer all kinds of questions that you have. I can't guarantee you that Sara will be the one answering. She does have to do other things in a few hours of the day.
But if you put in there that you want the answer for me, they'll send it over.
Oh, well, there, Sara, you're in trouble now.
If you want.
Okay. The National Disability Rights Network is another organization that can answer legal questions that you have. And then lastly, on this list, we have the Association of Americans with Disabilities Rev Up campaign, which can locally throughout the entire country, they have groups that you can join that help you get the vote out in your community. So if you want to make connections and work towards getting the vote out, this is a great organization to become involved with. Okay, voting early is another really important piece of the plan. If you vote early, and that is allowed in most states, if something goes wrong with the process, you end up having more days and more time to go back and try it again if you run into an issue. So I think this is wonderful for all voters, honestly. Okay, and our last slide here suggests that you build a voting team. Encourage friends or family members to go vote when you do. It could be a little voting party. It's fun. Choose an assistant to help you vote, to go with you if you would like one. Bring that person with you. Be sure that you contact your local election official ahead of time if you need to request accommodations, if you're not sure that the accommodations will be there, if you need a different polling site, as we mentioned earlier. And really importantly, I love reminding everybody that you are not alone in this. And sometimes we can feel like that. But the reality is that 1 in 6 voters has a disability, and we all have the right to vote. So there we are. And the last one, of course, we're going to vote. We've got our American flag here to open the floor to our audience for questions. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sarah and Troy and Marion, and to all the folks who submitted those videos with the tips. These are some amazing tips. Thank you. And it's that hotline too, just to know that if you have any questions between your website, the hotline, these are wonderful resources. We do have a few questions to get to, and again, we'll try to get to as many as we can. Please feel free to put additional questions in the Q&A, and any we don't get to tonight, we will, you can email answers@aphasia.org, or as they just mentioned, you can even reach out to the US Vote Foundation as well. So one question was, for those who bring up aphasia with poll workers, do poll workers understand what it is usually, or do then people have to, explain what that is?
Is that to me? I would say
Troy and I are deferring it to you, Sarah, because you know a lot about the training of the poll workers, right?
Yeah, so the poll workers do receive a lot of training ahead of time, and so they're trained on the devices, they're trained on rights, and they're also trained to know that if it becomes clear that someone has a disability, that disability is private, right? So you don't have to, you may choose to come with the aphasia card, as Troy shared with us in his interview, if that makes you feel comfortable. But you don't have to, right? Like if you are not required to do any of that. So I guess the more direct answer is they are trained, but they may not know, and they may also just be respecting your privacy. So poll workers are also trained to, they're not going to receive you with like suspicion and hostility, right? If you come in with aphasia, they are trained to really try to facilitate the vote, right? So I would say they're not going to be experts on aphasia. They may not even remember the term. I think I'm sure Marion and Troy know from their experiences that not everybody knows that term, right? So although they may not be experts, they are trained to try to help facilitate a vote with reasonable modifications without having to ask you directly why.
Really appreciate hearing that from you, Sarah, that the person with aphasia really is not obligated to do a whole explanation about what aphasia is unless they feel like it. That's really, it feels, I don't have aphasia, but I spend a lot of time with people with aphasia, and for me, it feels kind of freeing. Like I don't have to educate that person if I don't feel like it.
No, you're there to vote, right? You're not there to conduct a workshop. Right? I think the best analogy I can give you is you ever, when you're boarding a plane, you know how when they start boarding, they say, if you need any extra time, just go ahead and board early. And they're not carding anybody, right? They're not finding out like, why do you need to board early? So it's the same thing with voting. If you say that you need the ballot marking device, the assistance, a chair, even if it's, just say it's your need, right? Because of your, your rights through Help America Vote Act.
Sarah, is there any way to access those accommodations ahead of time versus just showing up and saying, I want to use these accommodations and figuring it out that moment? Like if you want to use the marking device, or can you go to your local town office or polling place in advance and check them out?
Absolutely, you sure can. And I think, as I mentioned before with the contacting your election office, just in case they haven't set it up yet, the machine, if you give them a heads up that this is going to happen, I'm sure they appreciate that, to make sure that they, but each cycle, I mean, this law went into effect in 2002. And so you figure each year they're getting more and more exposure to this in federal elections. So yeah, you can go ahead and do that, contact them ahead of time. But if you don't have time or the inclination, you still can access those rights at your polling location. Absolutely.
And as kind of a follow-up question, we had another question. If assistive devices are requested, but they're not ready for use, or it's the first time the election workers have used them, is there anything to be done in the moment?
Yeah, that's annoying, right? Because especially if you have a really busy schedule and you're just trying to pop in to vote, and if it's not set up, that can be really disappointing. Fortunately, they don't really take long to set up, so they're not, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's good to take a look at the tutorials ahead of time so that you can see it's not like, an emergency room with all kinds of stuff. It's just a simple device. So although it's very just not anything you can really do, but I think calling ahead, letting them know you're going to use it. I also really like what Marion pointed out earlier, that you can also, even if you don't need that device, I think a great tip for people who want to be allies or advocates for people that need the devices is ask for it yourself, even if you don't need it, so that it's the season is getting used to making sure you know how to use it. And then that way also you can, you'll be able to be someone's assistant, like, because you'll now be familiar with it and you can spread the news to people who don't even know. I mean, I was working with somebody recently who, through US Vote, Stephen McCoy, he's an incredible, charismatic voting advocate who is deaf and blind, and he stopped voting because he didn't want resistance, and he felt like he was being called out in the polling location. He didn't even know that he could access this device. So if you go out there and use it, you can spread the news and let people know.
Great. We have a comment in the chat I wanted to share too. Oren wrote that if you make a mistake in marking a ballot, you can ask for a replacement or new voting sheets, no matter the number of times you need to do this. What a great tip.
That's a great tip. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, if anyone else has other tips too, feel free to put them in the chat and we can share them with the group. What would happen? Can someone still vote if they become unexpectedly hospitalized at election time?
Yes. If you become unexpectedly hospitalized, you can request an emergency ballot. Yeah. So even every state has the different rules for it. But so for instance, in Connecticut, where I'm based, it's if you're hospitalized up to 6 days before an election, you can request the emergency ballot. So yes, most certainly, all states offer a form of an emergency ballot.
Do we contact that election official to receive that or request it?
Yes. Yep. You can, it will, the easiest way that you know it will work in all states and territories is to contact the local election official. It's also often available online.
Great. If someone requests a mail-in or absentee ballot, can they change their mind and vote in person?
I love that question because you might think you're going to be away, or you just sometimes it just feels good to go to your polling location, to feel a sense of your community and get your sticker. So for whatever reason, if you do change your mind, it varies by state. So in some states, you have to turn that ballot in when you show up at the polls. In some states, they'll look up your ballot for you and they'll just make sure that it hasn't been cast, because every ballot has a tracker, right? So if if you've mailed it in and then you show up at your polling place, they will know because it'll already be through the tracker. So they might just look that up. And in some states, they might give you a provisional ballot, which basically means it's like a ballot that won't be counted right away. It'll be set aside until they verify that your other ballot was not sent in, and then it's added into the official count. So it just is delayed pending verification. So of course, Andy chart that walks you through that. So it's for each state, we can tell you what the rules are for you.
Great. We got another suggestion too. If you're voting in person, you can take as much time as you need. No rush. And there's rules too around, like, they can't have you go away as long as you arrive by the time, right, Sarah?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and I think that is so important. Don't feel rushed. Right? This is one of hugely important decision that you're making. And so take your time. Everyone should, right? Think it through.
And of course, as the folks that Troy interviewed shared too, like the importance of planning ahead too, and Marion explained that too. So great. All right, well, we are almost at the end of our time. So I wanted to again thank our experts, Sara and Troy and Marion, so much for being here, sharing your expertise. Those slides and those resources are so valuable, and the NAA will be sharing the slides on the resources section of our website. We will share them in the upcoming newsletter, so make sure you are subscribed to the newsletter. We've shared the link in the chat, and that sign up is on the NAA's website. And we'll also share through some social media channels as well. So fantastic resources that we can use for this election and future elections as well. We've been sharing this link, but you can find more information and resources from the US Vote Foundation at their website, which is usvotefoundation.org. For more information about the National Aphasia Association, you can find educational materials, resources. We've updated our provider listing, supports in your area. Please visit us at aphasia.org. We have a lot of virtual events scheduled throughout the month that are open to people with aphasia, their care partners, and clinicians. And you can find that information at aphasia.org/online-events. And again, we want to hear your questions about voting or any other question that you have related to aphasia. You can email those questions to answers@aphasia.org. And finally, if you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions for Ask the Expert, email me at catherine@aphasia.org. We really do want to hear from you what you would like to learn more about. So please reach out and let us know. So thank you all again for spending your evening with us tonight. We hope to see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care, everyone.